Well, on Friday, my wife said a very horrible thing in our house. Makes me cringe. My wife said she's going to the dentist. And I tried to forbid that word from being in our house, word dentist. I hate that word dentist. I don't know about you, but I don't like the dentist. What gives the dentist the right to invade, to open your mouth and go in deep? I just want the dentist to give me white teeth. Isn't that enough to ask? But no. Oh, no. The dentist talks about other things like cavities, root canals, gum disease. What gives him the right? Some of you might be saying, well, you don't want to lose your teeth, do you? You don't want an infection, or you don't want your jaw throbbing, do you? Well, no, but why do we let him in so deep? That's not fair. And you're like, but you have to if you want to have a good life. Okay, all right, I'll give you that. As long as you allow Jesus to invade. Because he's going to be very invasive these next few weeks. In fact, I titled the series Spiritual Dentistry Series, starting in Matthew 5:21 to the end of chapter 5, because Jesus is going to be very invasive. In the same way that a dentist meddles in areas that we don't want him meddling, Jesus is going to meddle badly, and it hurts. And he's going to clean us out. And today's message is on murder. So if you can follow along with me in our spiritual dentistry series, we are going to read chapter 5, 21 through 26, if you read along with me. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you, everyone, and here's where you can hear the drill bit start. Everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother, some versions say calls him a raka or calls him an idiot, will be liable to the council. And whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. So, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you've paid the last penny. And that's where we're going to stop. And it's really built on the issue of the sixth commandment, thou shalt not murder, and how we should look at it. But before we go into it, I want you to look at verse 20 a second. I believe verse 20 is the key verse to understand Matthew from this point on until really the crucifixion story. I think his whole argument is he is going to talk about righteousness. And he says here, unless your righteousness exceeds, surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So he's going to talk about your righteousness, what it should look like, and in comparison to the scribes and Pharisees. Now, to the people at that time, they would hear that and they would say, you've got to be kidding. The scribes, the Pharisee scribes are guys who know the letter of the law with their whole life. That's all they do is study it. The Pharisees, those are the guys that dress differently and are separated, and that's all they talk about is the law. So you're telling me that I have to compete with them and be better than them? In current day, it would be like saying you have to live a life better than priests. You know those guys who abstain from marriage, or the Pope. You mean I've got to live better than the Pope? Or for some of you, it might be living better. You know, this is like, you mean I have to live better than Pastor Ken? Come on. I don't want to use the word exceed. I think a better word, what Jesus is trying to get at, is penetrates deeper. So read it like this: unless your righteousness penetrates deeper than that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So unless the life of God goes deeper in your heart than it does the scribes and Pharisees, I'm not sure you're worthy. So let's talk about going deeper, because I think if you get this, then you'll understand all the rest of what he's going to say in Matthew 5. But this is the principle, and the principle looks like this. So you have, I'm going to show you the body of water, but you have the top layer of water, which is the surface of the water. And if you look up here, 2 Corinthians 3:6 says, he has made us sufficient to be ministers of a new covenant, so a new agreement with God. But it's not of the letter of the law. That's surface. In fact, the Pharisees taught it in such a way that that's even almost obtainable. We can attain that. And what Jesus wants us to know, it's not about the letter of the law. It's about the spirit of the law, the intent, or what God really wants out of your life. And this is the reason he gave the law. It's not just to accomplish some easy statement. It's about conformity into the image of Christ. And so by going deeper, I mean, you're talking about principles that are derived out of the law that we need to live by, motives which undercover why do we do what we do, and then intentions. That means, what is our intentions? We are supposed to examine that, because that's the purpose of the law, to have us go deep. The spirit. This is the top part, the blue wave on the top, the surface is kind of like having bright white teeth. You do teeth cleaner and I'm done. Underneath is the dentistry, where it gets invasive. So that's what we're going to talk about. And if you look on verse 21, the issue is the sixth commandment. You shall not murder. What does murder mean? So let's just kind of define murder and then ask yourself, have you ever done this? But look at verse 21 real quick. Verse 21 says this: you have heard that it was said. So by that statement, he's talking to people of that day. Most of them could not read or write. It's an illiterate society, and they would depend upon the Pharisees and the scribes to take the scroll and then to teach it. So they would often hear the law like this: you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. And then you stop there. Murder, in this sense, means premeditated acts of violence. Motivated, as the Old Testament says, a lot of it can be motivated by jealousy, motivated by revenge, and motivated by hatred. I do not like that person, and I want them wiped off the face of the earth. And so, because of that, the action to do that is to kill with deliberate malice. And it's either an expressed, I hate you and I kill you, or the intent is implied. Because I kill you, it's pretty obvious I hate you. In fact, we just had a recent case with Derek Chauvin. The jury said it was obvious by his actions he had implied intent. It was premeditated. So the question then the Pharisee was looking at, according to the law, you shall not murder, have I murdered? And if I have not murdered, then I'm righteous. So let's see a show of hands. Who here has ever committed murder? I'm kidding. Nathan, I know you have, so I won't ask that question. But this is kind of easy. I've never killed anybody in cold blood. I've never killed anybody. See how righteous I am? I'm not a murderer, so I should go into heaven. A lot of people actually think that's the criteria. I'm better than all those murderers, and the Pharisees would teach it like that. In fact, they would add to it, they'd add this is Deuteronomy 17:13, or you will be judged by, the NAS says, by the magistrate or by the priests. They will judge you. In other words, if you commit bloody murder, you're going to go to court and you're going to be condemned. And most people would say, yeah, it makes sense. Okay, I'm righteous. I'm done. So let's go on to the seventh commandment. Jesus is like, hold on a second. That's just the surface. Do you want to know what the intent that God was trying to get at about murder? Here it is. So we're going to go deeper. And I'll be honest with you, this is invasive. And he says, if you look in verse 22, I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. So here's what he's saying. He's saying anger towards your brother or sister is equal to murder. Let that settle a second, because that's really harsh. In other words, here's what he means by that. If you have an attitude of hatred and disdain for somebody where you actually look down on them and don't want to have anything to do with them, that's akin to murder. But who is it about? Because I think what we've done in our culture is we've generalized this. We've made generalizations, meaning, for instance, don't be a racist. Now we know what that means, but it's sort of way out there. I'm not racist. Who does he say this is really about? Your brother. That means the person that is rubbing shoulders next to you, either in your house or in your church or in your community. It's specific. It's specific faces. The media loves to make us hate each other. That's their job. Do you know why the media does that? Because if they get you to hate other people, you'll watch their show. But it's full of pundits that they are labeled with hatred. We should not hate. On a general level, we shouldn't hate figures. I think we murdered Barack Obama so many times you can't even imagine. Do you know how many times Donald Trump has been murdered? Do you know how Joe Biden is currently being murdered? And anybody in office is being murdered? Stop it. And don't let the media take you there. That's their job. And a lot of people just dwell up there the whole time. But in a sense, did you know it is far easier to love those you know nothing about than those you have to live close by to? Start there. Remember, I came in here this morning and I said, God, who do I need to let go in my heart? And he will bring people up. Those are the people you start with. Don't do some vague group out there. Start with people you know. That's where it begins. That's why divorce is a weird thing to me. The person you love more than anybody becomes the person you hate more than anybody. That's sick. How do I know that? I've been through a lot of divorce. Church splits. The people that we worshiped with, now I can't even look at anymore. I turn my back to them and then I talk about them behind. That's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with hating to such a degree that you never want to be around anybody anymore. I'm just going to separate myself from the world. Why? Because I'm so angry. Look at 1 John 3, 11 to 15. Just let John's words sink in. 1 John 3, 11 to 15. Where this is the message that you've heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. We should not be like Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother. If you remember Cain and Abel, Abel offered the sacrifices and God accepted, and Cain did and did not. So out of jealousy, he was so mad at his own blood, flesh and blood brother, he killed him out of jealousy. Why did he murder him? Because his own deeds were evil and his brothers righteous. Do not be surprised, brothers, that the world hates you. We know that we have passed out of death into life because we love the brothers. Whoever does not love abides in death. Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. And then it goes to the next level. So Jesus then is going to continue. He says, whoever insults his brother. And the reason he says that, because you can say in your heart, I don't hate my brother. I'm not angry with him. So Jesus says, you sure? When's the last time you called somebody an idiot? Or you insulted them? Because your words reveal what's hidden. That's why he says, whoever insults his brother, some version says calls him raka, calls him stupid, idiot, trash, will be liable to the council. So this is really kind of scary. The first one, in verse 21, you'll be liable if you kill somebody, murder them, to the magistrate. But here, yeah, you'll be liable to the magistrate, but also to the council, which is the council of elders or leaders, Sanhedrin. And then whoever says, you fool. And this is contempt for the moral goodness or badness of somebody. You know, calling somebody deplorable or just rotten to the core or garbage. Whoever says that will be liable to give words of contempt, which are insults and attacks to destroy. Contempt means I'm looking down on somebody. I really believe they need to get out of here because I'm more superior, and my words show it by calling them fools, idiots. If that's what becomes us, then we deserve Gehenna. Gehenna was this place outside of Jerusalem where they'd throw the trash. They'd throw the carcasses of the offerings. In the Old Testament, they would have human sacrifice and have it out in Gehenna, and the fire was always burning. And Jesus says this is a metaphor of Matthew 25:41. Hell is prepared for the devil and his angels. And if you use words of contempt to destroy and attack other people because your tongue, as James says, is wicked, and if we stop here, like I can teach this, like just teach it, because that's what it says. That's clearly what it says. Do you believe this? How quickly do insults drip off your tongue? Whether it be because somebody is a different color, whether it be because somebody's politically different or from a different race, or because they made you mad. About 3 years ago, I was a chain gang guy on for the football field, meaning I'm holding the down markers, and I was over at Kent City Stadium. And my son was playing, and I usually would be on a chain gang so I could watch him close, and I didn't need to talk to anybody in the stands. It was a great way to do it. But we were playing one of our toughest rivals. And my son was good, and he had a great game. And the coach was mad at my son. Because I'm doing the chain gang in the opposite team's sideline. So I'm on the enemy's sideline while I'm doing the chains, and my son's on the other side having a great game. And from the announcement, they keep saying my son's name, and the guy's saying, why don't they blankety blank that kid? And then they announced my son's name, and I named my son Giovanni. And the coach said, who in the blank would name their son Giovanni? What kind of a name is that? And I'm right here. And the guy who's doing the yard markers goes to the coach and said, that's his dad. And the guy goes, oh, I didn't mean anything by that. I didn't mean anything by that. So you call your brother or sister in Christ who's made in the image of God an idiot, a fool, stupid. You don't mean anything by it? You don't think God hears you? Seriously? You scream at that TV and laugh if somebody you hate gets it? They should rot. Really? We are dark on the inside. We sang this earlier. This is powerful. Callie sang this. She said, we have judged your sons and daughters for the sin that is our own. Like let's take even this Chauvin trial. What he did is wrong. He went to the court. But how many people hate Chauvin? So isn't that the same intent of the heart on this side that he showed on this side? Just a question. So what do we do with this? Well, we fulfill the intent of the law. What is the intent of the law? Well, that's what 23 through the rest is. So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. So here he's speaking to the culture that would go miles walking a cow or a goat or a lamb to the temple to have them sacrificed on their behalf. So he's saying, some would walk 20 miles, some would walk 60 miles. And he said, so if you're walking your animal to the temple in Jerusalem, and on the way you realize you have something against your brother, hand the animal to the temple priest, they'll hold it for you, and then go back home and reconcile. Then God will hear you. Holy smokes. Jesus, are you serious? Yeah, that's how serious it is to be hating somebody. That's why it says, verse 24, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First, be reconciled to your brother. So what's the intent of the law? The light yellow. Do everything within your power to be reconciled with your brother and sisters. So if there's somebody has something against you and you know it, do all you can to reconcile. Yeah, but what if they don't? That's not on you. That's not yours. Just do what you can. Do what you can. Let other people simmer and hate if they want to, but you can't. And then he goes on in 25. Come to terms with your accuser. So let's say you did do something wrong. While you're going with him to court, let your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you'll never get out. This is the person that has done something wrong. We're just going to hash it out at the court. He's saying don't do that because it's probably going to turn out worse for you. Be reconciled. So the R.T. France says the intent of 23 through 26, which is an expression of the sixth commandment, which is going deeper than just the mere surface, is this. Do not allow bad relationships to be unresolved. That's the point. You are a child of God. Quit being angry. Here's 4 ideas of how we do this. Number 1, we have to learn how to budge. I'm not budging. I told him how I feel. I'm not going to budge. So we cross our arms. We say, I'm not moving, as if manliness is stubbornness. Let your arms go. Let your feet kind of be a little lighter and be willing to negotiate. Do not allow bad relationships to be unresolved. Point number 2, I'd say this, is let God get rid of your heart of stone. But you don't know how I've been hurt. You don't know how people have hurt me. Can I just let you in on a secret? Every human being who's ever walked on this earth has been hurt. Everyone. Every single one. And there's some people, but you haven't been hurt as bad as me. How do you know that? Well, I'm defending those who have been marginalized and are hurt. Who gave you that right? How do you know you've been hurt more than anybody else? I did this experiment in youth group one time. We had a lot of youth there, and I came in early, and 2 people just felt misplaced, and they sat in a corner. I said, how are you kids doing? They said, we're just outsiders. We don't belong. We don't feel part of the group. And I did a survey. When all the kids got there, and they're all sitting, it was quiet, I said, raise your hand if you feel like an outsider to the youth group. 98% of the kids raised their hand. Because we're human. We're human. But there's people that they feel hurt. They feel they have the right to be hurt. And because they're hurt, they're going to have a heart of stone. And then they keep recording more and more hurt. Do you know how often I was hurt by my sisters? I had a baseball game. And I'm coming home from my baseball game. Coming in the back door, and we had this garage that went up, and there's kind of like a place where you could suntan up there. And I'm going to pull. It was a long baseball game. I'm tired. I'm dusty. I pull the back door open, and I take a step, and all of a sudden, 2 5-gallon buckets of ice cold water land on my head, and I look up. My sisters are laughing at me. I ran away. I ran away from home. I'm not coming back. My dad was up there too laughing. I'm not coming back. And I ran across the street. I went to the backstop of the baseball field, you know, one of those ones that lean over so you don't stop foul balls. And I just laid on that backstop and I said, I'm not coming home. That will show them. That'll show them. And I remember my sister came about an hour later and said, hey, Chris, you know it's pizza night, don't you? You going to stay up there? And if you stay up there, Donnie's going to get you extra pizza. Oh, he is. So I jumped down and eating the pizza. And my sister said, that's funny, wasn't it? And I realized, do you know why they played that joke on me? Because I'm part of the family. Not because they hate me. We are so quick to be stony-hearted. And so it causes us to be angry, demanding people make reparations. Let it go. Third thing is stop posturing. Stop believing you're so much better, smarter, more righteous, and have more virtue than others. And here's the fourth thing I would say, is believe that through the Holy Spirit of God, through this incredible, what I would say, this incredible theological truth of regeneration, the Holy Spirit can change people. People can be changed. They're not just evil forever. So that means give them another chance. That's why Rocky IV was the greatest movie ever. If I can change, we all can change. And he brought Russia back to us. It's fantastic. Did you ever watch Rocky IV? TJ, you've seen Rocky IV. It's his favorite one. His favorite. So you might be saying, but that's impossible. You don't know how mad I am. You don't know how hurt I am. You don't know how everybody's hurt me. How do I do that? How do I do that? Greater love hath no man than this, that man lay down his life for his friends. Somebody already did it. Look to Jesus. Do you know Jesus, you want to talk about somebody that had every right to feel offended? They spit on him. They crucified him naked. They called him probably the B word because his dad and mom weren't married when he was born. You can read that in Psalm 69. He was the butt of jokes. Do you know Jesus was virtuous? So he had every right to be better than everybody else. He had every right to posture because he was smarter, more righteous, more virtuous. Jesus budged. He went to the cross. He didn't stand his ground. He actually carried the cross to Golgotha because he believed people could change, redeem, transform. Jesus is our example, and if he did it through his power, we can do it. That's what goal of Matthew 19:26 is. Go to that. I think this is also the second key. So the beginning, the first key is 5:20. Your righteousness must be greater than the Pharisees. I can't. Matthew 19:26. So what he does is through the rest of Matthew, he's going to debate with Pharisees. He's going to talk about the Sabbath. And then you get to this rich young ruler guy in chapter 19, the perfect guy. This guy, he said he did all the laws except he was very covetous. He didn't want to sell his stuff. So the disciples, and look at verse 25, they heard this, and the righteous rich young ruler went away. I'm sure they just heard all of Jesus' arguments and preaching. And in verse 25, they said, who then can be saved? We're to be righteous to this degree. Nobody can do this. 26 is hopefully what God wants to bring all of us to. Jesus looked at them and he said, with man, this is impossible. It's impossible not to be angry on your own. It's impossible not to feel offended, insulted. It's sometimes impossible not to yell at somebody and call them an idiot. But with God, all things are possible. That's what Jesus is trying to get us to, that if I have Christ in my life, I can do it. I can fulfill the law and the intent of the law. And I can be transformed into Christ by faith. There's a story I heard. It's a really sad story. This boy was physically and verbally abused by his dad as a young kid. He had a sister. She wasn't, but he was. He was verbally and physically hit by his dad. And at the age of 18, he had enough, and he ran away, left the house for good. His mom tried to coerce him back. He said, "No, Mom, I hate that man. I cannot live in a house with that man." And she would try to bring him back. She'd go out to dinner with him and say, "But just give him another chance." "No, he'll verbally abuse me and he'll beat me." And this son wanted to prove that he's better than him, became successful, but he would never talk to his dad again. About 20 years later, so when he was about 38, his mom had cancer and died. Went to her funeral, stood outside. He didn't cry. The dad tried to go up to him and talk to him, wouldn't talk to his dad. Stayed away. His dad died 10 years later of a heart attack, a massive heart attack. The son went to the funeral, watched the coffin go down into the grave. They filled the grave up with dirt. He waited all the way until it was finally done. And once the grave and the coffin was buried, the son said he could not stop crying. Started weeping in ways he never wept before. And the pastor who was there came up to him and said, "Son, what's mad? What's the problem? You didn't cry at your mom's funeral. Why are you crying so hard now? I thought you didn't love your dad." He goes, "It's not that. I've lived most of my life on hatred towards that man, and now that I can't hate him anymore, what do I live on? I have nothing to live for anymore." That's sad, but a lot of you are living on that kind of hatred. It drives you. Some of you actually go to the news so you can be angry again. Don't do that anymore. Living off hatred kills you. Anger makes you look to be offended, so every situation you enter into, you look to be offended. Then, anger causes you to keep records of everything bad that happened, so you carry around all of these books on people. And you just open them up and said, "Yep, they did all that. There, they did another thing." And so you're carrying around all of this. Anger also then will affect you harshly, even physically. It will affect those who are closest to you because you're never happy. But you know the people that you're usually angry at don't even know you're angry, so it's really not hurting them. So anger really is just hurting you. Often we think anger is going to get them, but it doesn't. So it's not doing you any good in the first place. And I would say this: if anger becomes you, nobody will want to be around you. It repels, divides. It's what's killing our country right now. Christians, however, must get angry at anger. You got to stop. Or we might be liable to the fires